Hello everybody, and my wife has been urging me for some time to tell a story that she knows from my childhood. Well, I've never told the story because I couldn't honestly see what relevance it had to anything. It was just a childhood incident, a story of something that happened, quite amusing really, but no relevance. But I was also just thinking today, and I was just wondering about people in positions of power, of authority, of respect, and I was wondering, do those people actually have any advantage over us, the normal people who don't have influence or authority or power? Do those people in positions of power and authority, do they have, are there different rules that apply to them? Can life be different for them? And I was wondering about this, thinking that perhaps I'm too cynical. Perhaps it's cynical to think that a president of the United States or a prime minister of the United Kingdom or the head of the European Parliament or a member of the European Parliament, it's perhaps cynical of me to think that these people may have gained that office to further their own personal interests. And it was when I was thinking about this that the story of my childhood came to mind, and I thought, well, is it indeed pertinent to this train of thought? So here is the story, everybody. This is the story when I was a young boy. Now, it had taken me a long time to convince my parents to buy me a bicycle. They thought, and perhaps rightly so, that I would be a menace with a bicycle to others and to myself. We also lived in a very, very nice neighbourhood of a very nice small city, market city, and traffic could be quite busy. So perhaps there was concern for my personal safety. This was in the, I would say, very late 60s, say possibly very early 70s, 1970, 71. In any event, I did eventually get a bicycle. And it was a second-hand bicycle, which was not a problem at all. No reason why they should buy a new. There were plenty of second-hand bicycles available, so why not continue to use one? I've talked about that in relation to cars. Anyway, I was delighted to have the bicycle, and although it didn't have any gears, it was good enough. It was a bicycle. But over the weeks, I decided that I didn't particularly like the colour, and I thought I would like to change the colour. I would like to paint it myself. Now, all perfectly reasonable, perfectly okay. I couldn't really consult with my parents about this, I felt. My father was an extremely busy man. I hardly ever saw him. He had a very important job in the medical profession, and so I hardly saw him. And my mother performed a social function, an important social function, and so really to ask my mother to help me with this or to advise me with this, it wasn't really, I didn't feel that it was really an option. Now, it may well have been, and in light of what actually happened, it probably would have been an awful lot better had I done that. But I didn't. I was young. So I decided that I would go into the beautiful little stone shed that my father kept all his D.I.Y. equipment in and his tins of paint. his tins of paint a nice colour, and I would paint the bike, and maybe I'd paint the bike in 2 different colours. So, what was required? Well, I required to find the paint, I required to find what colour the paint was. To do that, I may well require a screwdriver to open the tins of paint. Now, I acquired a screwdriver from inside of the D.I.Y shed, and all the paint tins were there, nicely lined up. My father did try to keep things fairly well ordered. Didn't always succeed, but he certainly tried. And so down came some tins of paint, none of which seemed to have colours written on, none that meant anything to me. But there were a series of tins completely without any labels on. I thought, well, they're paint tins, and so, well, I suppose I'll have to open them to see what colour paint they are. So, I began, and with one rather battered tin, I opened it up with a screwdriver, and this is a beautiful summer's day, by the way. I was outside of the shed. I thought I'd do it outside so I could see inside. The light was not good inside the shed, so I had the paint tins outside. I opened the first tin, and it was a pale blue colour, perhaps what would have been at that time called maybe a powder blue. And I didn't really like that colour. It was a nice enough colour in itself, but I didn't think it was the colour I wanted for my bicycle. I was a young boy. I wanted a bicycle with bold colours. So on went the tin lid again, and I tapped it down as hard as I could to make sure it was secure for when I put it back on the shelf. And on I went to the next tin. Now this was an unmarked tin, completely unmarked. It wasn't rusty, it wasn't dented, very nice tin. And I thought, well, this must be a modern new tin of paint, it might be a new colour. And so I thought I shall open this one and see what this is. I would add that before I opened any of these tins, I had actually shaken the tins up to make sure the colour was mixed. I was old enough to understand the paint had to be mixed to see what its true colour was. So I vigorously shook this second tin and then placed the screwdriver under the lid to open it. I was opening them carefully, of course, and as this one opened, there was a hiss and then an explosion as the lid blew itself off. And out of the tin, gushing everywhere like a fountain, I just released the pressure from the tin, was red, rank smelling, thick liquid. Definitely not paint. It was going everywhere, and it was a very large tin of paint. Now, I was quite small, really, so large may not have been large, but let me tell you, it was large enough that by the time it had disgorged its contents, helped by me, of course, who in my panic tried to put the lid back on and knock the entire tin over, its contents streamed down the path, having already covered me in its initial explosion from the tin, down the pathway, out through the gate and onto the pavement or the sidewalk if you're in the US. It smelt awful, and it didn't take me very long at all to realise with absolute horror that what it was in fact blood. Now, young though I was, I also was smart enough to realise that this was a potential disaster of incredible proportions. My father, rushing through my head, my father is a doctor. because I have got my father into an awful lot of terrible, terrible trouble. And incidentally, what on earth is he doing with a tin of blood in his shed? So these were the thoughts that went racing through my mind. There was no option. I had to take it firmly on the chin and rushed to my mother to tell her of the disaster that had unfolded outside. She was absolutely speechless in horror. She rang my father, a very busy man, a very important and very busy man, who came back from his work and who got the garden tap running, the garden hose going, and was hosing furiously down the wall of the house where the paint had splattered on its initial explosion from the tin, and then down the path, across out onto the sidewalk stroke pavement, and washing it as quickly as he could down into the gutter. There was not much that could be done about the smell. Obviously the smell subsided the more the blood was washed away. They were both too distracted by the horror of what had happened and the implications, potential implications, that nothing was said to me during this operation. It was absolute frantic scrabble to clean up any evidence. Now, to me at that time, it was evidence of what exactly? That was the horror that was sinking into my mind. What on earth does this mean? What on earth has happened? And where is my sister anyway? Of course, that was a joke, everybody, about my sister. Now, I don't think, when it was asked of me by my father just what on earth I thought I'd been doing, I explained to him I'd been wanting to paint my bicycle and I was simply looking for a nice colour. The first tin had been this awful blue colour, and I didn't think it was a good enough colour, so I opened that tin to see if it was a better colour. He explained to me. He was incredulous. I think, in fairness to the man, he was dealing very well, I think, through absolute relief that he had cleaned up the situation before anything had been reported or the police had arrived. He explained to me that the blood had in fact come not from the hospital, from some patient or any other awful thing. It had actually come from an abattoir where he had a patient who had said to him, my father loved growing roses, and this patient had said, if you put blood on your roses, it's an incredibly good food form and you will have fantastic blooms in the summertime. And he'd given him blood in the tins from the abattoir to put on the rose beds. I was, of course, mightily relieved, although a little bit incredulous. I had no idea at this point in time that such things could be done. Or that roses, like vampires, enjoyed drinking blood. I had a very active imagination. So I think he was so relieved to have avoided an incident, and I was so relieved not to be in trouble, that the matter was really quickly put to bed. Although, as for painting my bike, I was told the paint I would have to use would be the awful blue colour. I suppose that was my punishment. Now, why does that story remind me? I think because my father was a man of influence, very respected member of the community, and whilst nothing came of that incident, I would, looking back, suspect that his standing within the community, at least in part, eased the troubled waters, not only over that incident, but other incidents which I did cause petition to further the interests of my family, to assist my family, my children. Anyway, tell me what you think. Tell me whether you think I'm wrong, whether I'm cynical, and if any of you guys have seen my sister, do let me know. That is, of course, a joke again. Thank you very much for listening, and do let me know what you think, and leave a like, leave a dislike, leave a comment, favourable or otherwise. Thank you very much. It's a pretty grisly day, isn't it, this drive? Each drive at this time of the year is likely to be this way. But hope you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you all later. Have a good day. Bye bye for now.